Okay, folks, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome you all and thank the University of Kansas for setting up this facility and having such a great room and all the systems. This is truly first class. What we're going to start with is we're going to start with a prayer and a pledge of allegiance. So if you'll all rise for the prayer, and Representative Tom Sawyer will start us off with that prayer.
Let's be in the attitude of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, please bless these proceedings. We're thankful for this day that you have made, and we're thankful to be here on the campus of the University of Kansas to hear from the citizens of Kansas. We're thankful for the tour we've been on and for the great comments we've had, the great experiences we had across the state of Kansas. Dear God, please be with the citizens as they speak to us. Give them the strength and courage they need to tell us what they think and what we need to know. And dear God, please grant us safe passage as we head home after this. In your great name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And you'll join me in the pledge. The flag is off to my right. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
Just so you know it.
Okay. I want to thank you all again for being here today. We're excited for the opportunity to hear from you about your thoughts on your community. This is a listening tour for the committee, the body, and the body to hear from you about what's important to you in your area, that things we should consider as we continue to move through this process. Again, it's not the only opportunity, but this is an opportunity. Just let's focus on that right now if we can. I'd like to take a minute to introduce a few of our members. I'll start off with, to my left is the Senate Redistricting Chair and Senate Vice President, Senator Rick Wilburn. And sir, if you'll go ahead and introduce your team.
Thank you very much. I am Rick Wilburn, Vice President of the Kansas Senate, and I also chair the Senate Redistricting Committee. My vice chair is the President of the Kansas Senate, Ty Masterson, and the ranking member is the Senate Minority Leader, Diana Sykes, to my left.
Okay, and to my right, I'm Chris Croft. I'm the chairman of the House Redistricting Committee. And to my right is my vice chair, Representative Brad Ralph from Dodge City. And to his right is Representative Tom Burrows. He's the ranking member, and he's from Kansas City, Kansas. In the audience, I also want to recognize, or up actually on the table, our House Minority Leader, Representative Tom Sawyer, who led us in the prayer. And then we have also, we want to recognize the Senator Marcy Francisco and Representative Boog Heiberger. We are actually in their district, so we want to recognize them here. Okay. Most importantly, we'd like to acknowledge you, the audience, and thank you again for taking the time, your time, to be here today and being part of this process. Before we continue, I'd also like to turn the mic over to Representative Tom Burrows, who would like to pass along a welcome as well. Okay. Oh,
Can you hear me?
Great.
Thank
He's
you.
got a great voice, right?
I want to express my appreciation to all of you that have joined us here today and online. This is the 14th and final stop on this monumental tour. We have a tremendous task ahead of us, and your input is critically important. Like many of you, the committee members want a fair and transparent redistricting process. Our compressed schedule this week is just the beginning, or this is now the end of a busy week. And actually, the microphones are working, so that's a blessing. The information and testimony you will share here today will impact your communities. I strongly suggest to you to continue to let your voice be heard. Again, thank you for joining us. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, again, we appreciate you, but also we have a lot of the committee members are online, and there are folks in the public that are online. And again, we appreciate that process. This tour, as was mentioned, is a listening tour. And it's from hear from you about your community. And it's just one step in the state's redistricting process. And our goal at the end is that we are exceptionally transparent and have unbelievable public access. That's our goal at the end, and we're working hard to get there. Need your help to make that happen. What you have to say is very, very important to us. We have all asked that the state elected officials to provide their comments at a later time so they can focus on what the public has to say. So that's why in here, you won't hear us talking. We want to hear you talking about what's going on. We are looking forward to becoming more familiar with your communities and hear what you have to say on things we should consider as we're drawing boundary lines and how to improve the process to benefit all. There was an online sign-up sheet, and we had a sign-up sheet here at the entrance for those wishing to speak. If you didn't get a chance, we have some folks right back here that could still have you sign up if you'd like to do that. All right. And that's how we'll keep the track on time. If the speaker is more comfortable speaking in another language and to ensure that the speaker's thoughts are more accurately portrayed, we encourage the speaker to use that language. We will have the comments transcribed and translated following today's meeting and provided to the committee members, the legislative body, and the public. We're also using closed caption in the room. Just confirming, wanted to make sure we're good. I believe we do have an interpreter here. I just want to make sure I get the name correctly. Yes, ma'am. I don't see the name.
Offline is Jasmine.
Well, I tell you what, the online interpreter is Jasmine Vasey, and we'll get her name here in a second. I'll make sure we announce that here in a second. This time around, redistricting is a little more challenging with the delay. She's probably signed her name for everybody. This time around, redistricting is a little more challenging with a delay in the U.S. Census data. By conducting this listening tour now, though, what it provides us with an opportunity is to listen to you about what is important to you. What are the unique aspects that we need to know? How things have changed in the last 10 years and things that you just want us to think about. It's like when we sit down and start talking about things is, what do you want to pop on our mind? Kind of, if you go down that path, that's going to be really helpful to us in the overall process. We do absolutely welcome your comments on the process. We've heard a lot, and we'll try to do better on the next time as we're going around. This listening tour is just one step, as was mentioned, in a very long and continual process. To address the overall process and where we are in that sequence, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Jordan from the Kansas Legislative Research Department. Jordan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. Again, my name is Jordan Milholland. I'm a senior research analyst with the Kansas Legislative Research Department. Wanted to start off to let you all know that testimony for today's meeting can be accessed on the Kansas Legislature website. You can either go to the House Committee on Redistricting or the Senate Committee on Redistricting to find the submitted testimony as well as a copy of the presentation I'll be making. So I wanted to provide an overview of the census and redistricting process for everybody today. Some part of the census is constantly happening, and redistricting is just a part of this cycle. Federal law requires the states have opportunity to participate in census preparations, and states are required to participate to get census data for certain areas of the state, such as precincts. The program requires states to participate through a nonpartisan entity. In Kansas, we participate through the Kansas Legislative Research Department. This current cycle, we've been working with the census since 2015, and will continue through 2025. The program is broken into 5 phases. Phase 1 is the block boundary suggestion project. Phase 2 is the voting district project. Phase 3 is census delivery of census data. As you all probably heard, we received some data yesterday, some of the preliminary data. If you're interested in the county level population numbers, those have been posted on the census website. You can see any of the counties in Kansas. And these files that we've received will take some manipulation to get to some of the more relevant data. And then we're expecting the more user-friendly files to be delivered by September 30th. Phase 4 is confirmation of congressional and legislative district boundaries. This occurs after redistricting. And then phase 5 is feedback. Next, I'd like to speak a little bit about the 2020 apportionment. So earlier this year, we had already received the total state population that's used for the census. The total population was determined to be 2,937,880. and that's good for a gain of 84,762 persons. Kansas did not gain or lose a congressional seat for this cycle. Next, I'd like to speak about the adjustment. From 1988 to 2019, Kansas Constitution and state law required an adjustment be made by the Secretary of State for military and college students. In 2019, the legislature passed a Senate concurrent resolution that added language to the November 2019 ballot, which was then later approved by voters. And that language removed the requirement for the adjustment for students and military. Next, I'd like to discuss a little bit about the 2022 session. So this process is a legislative process. Maps are drawn on the computer, and then those maps are then turned into bill language once they've been submitted to committee. The legislature will then hold meetings on these bills, just be like any other bill. You'd have the opportunity to submit comment, testimony, and they could be subject to amendment as well. The legislature will propose, vote on, and approve congressional, Kansas House, Kansas Senate, and Kansas Board of Education district maps. Then, just like other bills, the governor will either sign, veto, or allow the bill to become law without signature. Finally, the Supreme Court will have a review process, and they'll approve the state maps. I have a little bit more information up here about the process after a bill is passed. So those bills will be published in the Register upon passage, and then the Attorney General has 15 days to petition the Supreme Court, who is to determine validity, and then the court has 30 days from the filing of that petition to enter judgment.
Yeah.
If the maps are valid, the process is complete until the next cycle. If the maps are invalid, the Attorney General then must repetition the court once a new map is drawn. And there's a certain timeline here that's listed. Just know that the process will repeat until the court says the maps are valid. Next, I'd like to highlight some KLRD resources that are available for you all. If you visit our website, ks.gov, there's a redistricting tab, and you can access information on that tab. You can see an example here from 2012 of the different reports that were run for that particular map. And this is an example to show you what's available. We do have the 2012 plans still up. So if you're curious about the information that might be available for this next cycle, feel free to go and explore what we have on our website. And similar reports are run for each plan that's subject to a technical review. Finally, I wanted to highlight our contact information if you have questions. So we do have a room in the State House. You can also phone our office number at 296-3181. You can visit our website, kslegislature.org/KLRD. Or if you have questions, I know many of you submitted testimony through this email address for this meeting. If you email redistricting@klrd.ks.gov, we can get to your questions. Mr. Chair, I believe that concludes my presentation.
Okay, and I see there's a few people that have hands raised, and what we were trying to do is provide information. And we're going to offer, am I back? If I'm not back on? I'm back on? Okay, you can hear me back there. What I was going to say is that he's offering a presentation. If you got some questions, what I would just encourage you, because we've got a lot of speakers, we want to get through everybody, what they have to say. Could I ask you that you go approach him right afterwards? He won't leave. We'll ask him to answer your questions then. Okay? So. Okay. Thank you, ma'am. All right. Jordan, thank you. For those of you who sent in comments as of yesterday's, those documents are in the inbox for each of the committee members and are posted online on the legislative webpage for the redistricting committee at kslegresearch.org. If anyone wants to provide comments later, please send your comments to redistricting@klrd.ks.gov, or you can visit the website, or you can also mail to KLRD 300 Southwest 10th Street, room 68-W, Topeka, Kansas 66612. We've already had one piece of mail and it was actually delivered here, so that's very nice. All right, with that, the legislative website does provide instructions, so just ask that you follow those, but I also want to highlight that there is no cutoff to your comments. If you want to provide comments, send them in. If you're thinking about it 2 o'clock in the morning, send them in. Whenever you think about them, send them in. We would like, and we will read your comments. We appreciate what you have to say. The House Committee Vice Chair, to my right, Representative Brad Ralph, will maintain a timer and indicate with a card your time remaining. The Vice Chair will start when there's 2 minutes left, 1 minute, 30 seconds, and he'll continue, and then he'll end with a card that says your time's expired. Because we have so many speakers, I'd ask that you at least honor that when it comes to that card, so it just kind of times it towards you get to that point. Based off the number of people signed up, we have allocated 3 minutes to go through that process. Again, a brief reminder, we have received several comments on the process. We do appreciate your comments and welcome them. Again, 10 years, things that have changed, things that you want as special considerations as we go through. It's very important to us. With that, the first speaker we have is Jay Hudley, private citizen. Thank you, sir. And if we could get the second speaker right, it would be Charlie Crabtree. Please, sir. Welcome.
Keep it short and sweet. Try to keep in mind that even though we aren't able to vote for all of you, the laws and regulations you pass affect all of us in the state. So just because we can't vote for most of you sitting in front of us, that we would like you to keep in mind that we're all in this state together. And please keep this fair. Try to remember to keep in mind historic areas. And try not to break up anything. Let's keep it nonpartisan, like your presentation stated. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Next up is Charlie Crabtree, League of Women Voters of Lawrence, Douglas County. And next up is Quinn Reed.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Legislative Redistricting Committee, I'm Charlie Crabtree, a board member of the League of Women Voters of Lawrence and Douglas County, and I've lived right here in Lawrence for the past 52 years. My focus is Kansas 3rd District. I agree with the 2012 federal court ruling creating Kansas legislative and congressional districts with the entirety of Wyandotte and Johnson counties staying in the 3rd District. They formed that district's core for decades, and the court concluded in O'Sullivan they should stay in that district to represent the Kansas portion of greater Kansas City. O'Sullivan said Wyandotte County should stay in a single district so its large minority population's voting power may not be diluted, furthering state goals of creating compact and contiguous districts, maintaining county and municipal boundaries, and grouping communities of interest. Many Wyandotte and Johnson County households fall within the $25,000 to $50,000 income range and depend on jobs across county lines, leading to economic and social connections. Their population density leads to unique environmental concerns, water and air quality, transportation, and land use. This area is home to many branch campuses of post-secondary institutions, 2 public community colleges, and numerous private and post-secondary institutions. This community of interest actively participates in and benefits from metro regional planning and services and requires a different approach in its legislative representation. Watering down this representation by moving boundaries west or south would be huge disservice. We support accountable government, not partisan politics. Democracy is served when districts are drawn in fairness and integrity of neighborhoods, when classes of voters are not targeted for suppression, and when those in power practice the golden rule of politics. Please practice fair redistricting rather than partisan gerrymandering to redraw district lines in an attempt to unseat a sitting legislator or to disenfranchise a particular voting segment or district. Gerrymandering skews districts for political gain. Rise above unfairness and stand for democracy, if democracy is to become more than just a talking point. Thank you for this opportunity to raise my voice for democracy.
Thank you. Quinn Reed is up and followed by is Amit Castle.
Members of the House and Senate Redistricting Committees. My name is Quinn Reed. I am the Policy Research Analyst for Kansas Appleseed Center for Law and Justice, a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to the belief that Kansans working together can build a state full of thriving, inclusive, and just communities. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I live here in Lawrence. I attended KU where I studied political science, economics, and the law. I was very involved at the Dole Institute of Politics. It was here on this campus where I learned that politics actually can be a place where good people with differing ideas come together to do what is right. Unfortunately, redistricting has been a place where we have seen that fall apart. We have already heard political leaders talk about using this process for political gain. It has been used as a partisan weapon to dilute the voting power of political rivals. It has been used to reduce the voting power of students in Kansas, Kansans of color, Kansans who are gay or transgendered. Disabled Kansans have not had equal access to this process, and we can do better. Every day in my job, I analyze the research and data revealing these impacts. Kansas Appleseed works to engage and activate people to become advocates within their communities. We know people who are civically engaged have a better quality of life. They are safer from crime, they have more access to health care, they have more secure housing, they have more nutritious food, a better quality education, and more jobs with livable wages. Full civic participation requires that everyone's vote has an equal weight. That is how we all thrive. Thank you for your time and your engagement today. I urge you to listen to as many people as you can, even outside of these 14 sessions, and really consider the input that you hear, especially from the people whose life experiences may be different than your own. A good redistricting process will require empathy and an understanding of the full range of diverse communities that make up this great state. We are all Kansans. Let's make sure everyone's vote has equal power. Thank you.
Please.
Good afternoon. My name is Amy Castle, and I'm a proponent for fair and transparent redistricting. I would first like to thank the committee for holding public town halls on the issue of redistricting in Kansas. With that said, I would like to point out some of the problematic issues with these town halls. Foremost, we shouldn't even be here today. The redistricting committee should fully utilize and consider the 2020 census data, the initial results of which were released only 2 days ago. The data showed significant population increases among people who identify as multiracial, Hispanic, and Asian. In other words, we've become more diverse, and redistricting should fairly reflect that diversity. I am utterly perplexed how the committee intends to equitably draw our district lines without appropriate time to review pertinent and important information about our state's changing population. Moreover, by September 30th, the Census Bureau will release data to state officials, that's you, that includes a toolkit of DVDs and flash drives to help you analyze the census data. I urge the committee to postpone consideration of redistricting until the Census Bureau has released all data related to the 2020 census. In fairly redistricting, the committee should strive to avoid redistricting that has the purpose or effect of diluting minority voting strength. The committee should also recognize communities of interest and ensure that the new districts are easily identifiable and understandable to voters. The committee can't accomplish these goals without carefully, meticulously, and meaningfully analyzing the underlying data from the Census Bureau. In addition to lacking relevant data, the committee announced these town halls with very little notice and scheduled the hearings during the workday when a lot of people can't even attend. And 1 hour and 15 minutes hardly seems enough time to fully hear and consider testimony from your constituents on redistricting. My hope is that the committee realizes the unnecessary haste with which it has acted. Redistricting is not a race, and no one gets a prize for crossing the finish line first. Rather, redistricting profoundly affects the political power of every Kansan, and the process should be fair, transparent, and methodical. The committee should alter course by waiting for the Census Bureau to release all its data and then commit to holding additional town halls, giving ample notice, giving plenty of time for testimony, and scheduling the town halls at a time other than the workday so more people can attend. Thank you for hearing my testimony.
Thank you. Next up is Teresa Wilkie. Is that right?
My name's Teresa Wilkie, members of the committee. I'm a citizen of Kansas. My family has been in Kansas since before Kansas is a state. It's my belief there is evidence that this redistricting proposal is intended to make it more difficult for anyone other than a Republican to hold federal office in the United States Congress. Further, public input has been discouraged by the short period of time and limited hours offered Kansas citizens to give testimony. Also, the Bureau of Census has not yet released or only recently released critical data that should be considered in any logical desire to redistrict voter precincts. Therefore, the current desire to redistrict is not based on census data. Therefore, I believe the motivation for this redistricting proposal is a clear attempt to gerrymander or establish an unfair political advantage for a particular party by manipulating the boundaries of electoral districts. And I thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next presenter will be Robert Steinke, a private citizen, and then followed by Jonathan Andrews.
Can everyone hear me? I am disappointed at the process you have chosen to work redistricting in the state of Kansas for the upcoming election cycle in 2022 and going forward. I moved to Topeka this year from Wisconsin, and I remember the cloak and dagger operation that Republicans subjected Wisconsinites to a decade ago, and it looks the same as happening here. An incredibly rushed procedure to help add cover to a secretive and strictly partisan process. The goal was obvious and ultimately successful: to rig the maps in favor of Republican politicians running for office during the next decade. Ultimately, districts that were originally created with community boundaries in mind were split up and no longer competitive. I see that process happening right here in Kansas. Fair maps should be a no-brainer not only to Democrats and independents, but to Republicans as well, as it stands to reason that one day the script could be flipped and you are the party in the minority. I beg you to consider your Christian duty to honesty and slow the process down and open it up to be transparent. I thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jonathan Andrews, private citizen. Jonathan Andrews. Okay, we'll move on. Next will be Sonia Zarnecki. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly, ma'am. And she's from the
That was pretty good. Thank you.
League of Women Voters of Lawrence and Douglas County.
Chair and members of the Redistricting Committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Sonia Zarnecki. I am speaking for the League of Women Voters of Lawrence and Douglas County. The League is nonpartisan. We do not support or oppose any candidate or party. The League encourages political responsibility through informed and active participation of citizens in government, and to advocate on our numerous studied governmental issues. We advocate for fair maps for Kansas. We are glad to hear that there may be more town halls after more census data is available. We look forward to seeing those new dates on the KLRD website soon. Town halls should be scheduled on evenings and weekends when more people can attend and with at least 2 weeks advance notice. The map drawing process should be transparent with clear understanding on decision points. There should be as little change from current maps as possible, except to accommodate new population counts and correct areas where representation does not reflect the community. For decades, the League has advocated for an independent commission to draw our congressional and state legislative maps. We know that no matter how legislators might fight the temptation to draw maps that benefit them or their party, that temptation is averted with an independent commission. We ask for a transparent process that keeps communities of interest intact and follows political boundaries of cities, counties, school districts, and townships as much as possible. Also, communities of Indigenous people and people of color should be left intact, not split to dilute their voting power. We object to 2 practices that have been used in the past: protecting incumbent districts by including incumbent home addresses and including voting data or voter registration information. The first benefits incumbents unfairly, and the second corrupts the basic population counts. Both lead to unfair districts. For 10 years, ending just a decade ago, Lawrence was split between the 2nd and 3rd congressional districts. That should not happen again. Lawrence has grown in the last 10 years, particularly to the west. We understand that with Kansas legislative senators representing over 73,000 and representatives serving over 23,000, that Douglas County will have at least 2 Kansas senators and at least 4 or 5 representatives. We have found that those legislators who only have a small portion of Douglas County in their district tend not to come to our candidate forums nor respond to our questions. The League also asks that the Kansas City metro area or Wyandotte and Johnson counties stay intact in the Congressional District 3 as much as possible. The League will continue to participate in this decennial reapportionment and redistricting process. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you very much. Next is Pam Ensley, private citizen, followed by Patricia Weiler.
Good afternoon. I'm glad to be able to be here at this meeting today. I have drawn on an opinion piece from Max McCoy from the Kansas Reflector on August 8th, 2021. And I chose this because he really concisely put my thoughts and my frustrations and my disheartenment into what's happening in the district redistricting meetings. My name is Pam Ensley. I'm a retired Kansas educator, but I continue to substitute in 2 suburban Shawnee County districts. So because I am retired, I have the time to attend this meeting, offering input into the congressional districts of Kansas. And that opportunity has not been fairly afforded to citizens of these congressional districts who might like to offer input into drawing the districts. During the last redistricting in 2011, it took 4 months to hold 14 town hall meetings to gather input from voters across the state. And this year, those town halls have been compressed into a single week, maybe shorter. All of the town halls have been held on weekdays and only 4 have taken place after business hours. And in addition, each town hall is slated for only 75 minutes. And I hope that's extended after so much information was given prior to letting the citizens stand. So from Mr. McCoy's piece, the schedule is a clear signal from the GOP-led House and Senate Joint Redistricting Committee that public participation in the process is discouraged. Coming with little more than a week's notice, it leaves little time for the public to prepare in-person testimony, always the most powerful, and it makes it difficult for those who work for a living to appear. But these meetings are also happening before many of the college students are returning to campus. Redistricting hearings have happened prior to results from the release of the recent census data, and these results are necessary to redraw fairly the congressional districts. We already know that the Kansas population grew about 3% in the last 10 years and will keep its 4 congressional seats. What we don't know yet is neighborhood by neighborhood detail on race, Hispanic origin, age, and housing levels. But new information was published since this opinion piece from Mr. McCoy. The report from the Census Bureau issued on Thursday, August 12th, 2021, to provide analysis for the first local level results on redistricting data is showing that people of color represented 43% of the total U.S. population in 2020, up from 34% in 2010. The non-Hispanic white share of the U.S. population fell to 57% in 2020, shrinking by 6 percentage points since 2010, the largest decrease of any race or ethnicity. So non-Hispanic white, that's us, white folks. And that's the kind of information you need to redraw these districts fairly, or to arm yourself with the facts in advance. I'm sorry, what?
Your time's up.
May I ask for one more minute to finish this up,
Ma'am,
please?
there's a whole crew behind you that need to still talk.
So how do I make sure that my points get to all of you?
What-
May I have per minute?
Uh,
Thank you.
Certainly, that's fine. Go ahead.
Thank you. It's my opinion, not Mr. McCoy's now, that the rush process of the redistricting public input meetings seems to reflect a need on the part of this committee to ignore the facts produced by the Census 2020 report. And it also strikes me that the redistricting plan at this time are aimed at keeping the voting outcomes in favor of white voters as opposed to people of color. It appears to me that there is an agenda by some of you on this committee aimed at who gets to vote in Kansas. Let me remind you in the audience today of the voting bills that came out of the past legislature. Those bills and the redistricting process are aimed at making voting harder and not easier for all of your constituents. Gerrymandering has been brought up. Susan Wagle, a Wichita Republican, former Senate president, said the part you're not supposed to hear out loud at a September 2020 meeting of the Pachyderm Club, that redistricting would be an opportunity to unseat U.S. Rep. Sharice Davids by gerrymandering. So the two come, I learned something about gerrymandering.
Ma'am.
Packing is when officials concentrate one voting
Ma'am.
group together. You know,
Okay.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sir. That's fine. What's your name, sir? Yes, sir. Thank you.
gerrymandering under packing is when officials concentrate one voting group together to reduce their voting power in other districts. And cracked gerrymandering is diluting a group's voting power across many districts. These strategies make races uncontested or less competitive, giving one group an unfair advantage. In the 2020 general election, there were 58 uncontested races in the Kansas House, Senate, and State Board of Education. The League of Women Voters is advocating for an independent, nonpartisan commission to draw fair district maps. Back again from Mr. McCoy, democracy is best served when districts are drawn with respect for fairness and the integrity of neighborhoods, when classes of voters are not targeted for suppression, and when those in practice power the golden rule of politics, remembering that someday, maybe in Kansas, there might be a true democracy. I urge you to remember that the true purpose of congressional districts is to allow as many people as possible to let the opportunity to let our voices be heard as voters during the voting process. And I thank you for the audience members who gave me your minutes, and I thank you for the time to talk.
Fair enough. So thank you, ma'am, for your comments, and sir, Mr. Inkman, you still have a minute and a half if you'd like to use that later. Yes, sir. Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, with that, Patricia Weiler, is that correct? Wheeler? Okay, thank you, ma'am. From Douglas County Democratic Party, correct?
That's right.
Yes, ma'am. Please, welcome.
Indeed. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments to the Joint Committee for Redistricting. My name is Patricia Willer, and I'm the chair of the Douglas County Democratic Party. I'm happy to be among those welcoming you to Douglas County, and I thank you for holding this meeting. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to participate in this town hall meeting today. I do have to note, as others have before, that my testimony, as well as others, is minimized by the fact that the census data has only just now been released and not even completely released. We don't have the opportunity yet to study the data, and I don't think you have either. But my hope is that the 2020 census will be used by the joint committees to ensure that a fair redistricting plan is developed. We feel strongly, and I really must emphasize this along with many of my fellow Douglas County people who are here, we feel most strongly that minority voting strength should not be diminished. It's my understanding that the joint committees have announced that additional town hall meetings will be held in the future now that the data has been made available and you've begun your work. That will help us all tremendously. We would be gladly welcome you back to Douglas County for further discussions, but such discussions with citizens is critical for a fair and transparent redistricting process. I do consider Douglas County to be a community of interest. It's a community that many of us hold dear. As most of you know, through the years, Douglas County has been bounced around a little bit in the redistricting. We are pretty comfortable in the current district that was created by the courts, and we hope that those districts remain largely intact. We are a good fit now. We would not be a good fit if gerrymandering occurs. We want districts that will be equal in population, compact, and contiguous. One request that we do have is consideration be given when establishing the districts for the state legislature to make Douglas County whole. Currently, we have a portion of the county assigned to a majority Shawnee County district, and similarly to Leavenworth County. Douglas County is a community and would be well served to be made whole. Our rural areas have been assigned elsewhere, have strong identification, with the services, government, and issues in Douglas County. So we hope that you will consider that. Finally, another request we have is that the guidelines and criteria for redistricting be made available to the public. Are you following the guidelines previously established for the last census, or will new guidelines be adopted? In either event, that information should be clear to the public, and I don't think it is yet. Thank you. Your work is important. We appreciate the opportunity to speak, and we thank you for what we trust will be your fair and transparent deliberation.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next will be Aline Berquist. Did I get that correct?
Close enough.
ACLU of Kansas.
Committee chairs and members of the Redistricting Committee, thank you for the opportunity to present testimony today. My name is Eileen Berquist. I'm Community Engagement Manager at the ACLU of Kansas. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that works to preserve and strengthen the civil rights and liberties of every person in our state. The ACLU of Kansas asks this committee to take every step possible to avoid prison gerrymandering in Kansas. Prison gerrymandering is the process by which incarcerated individuals are counted as residents not of the places where they lived before their incarceration, but of districts where they are incarcerated. This creates unequal representation and electoral maps that underrepresent communities of color. Prison gerrymandering uses incarcerated people to bolster the voting strength of the largely white rural districts where incarceration facilities exist. This skews the voting power of that district and seals it in for a decade. Prison gerrymandering also dilutes the voting strength of minority groups by taking their vote out of their communities of origin. The legislature must treat incarcerated people as residents of the cities and towns to which they will eventually return. Only then will our maps provide fair representation. To avoid deliberately disenfranchising majorities and communities of color through prison gerrymandering, this commission must take action. In 2013, a large coalition of national organizations, including the ACLU, sent a letter to the Census Bureau urging reform to end prison gerrymandering. Indeed, in 2016, nearly all of the 77,887 public comments received by the Census Bureau called for incarcerated individuals' addresses to be defined as their pre-incarceration address. The Census Bureau made changes as a result. Now, any state wishing to move their prisoner population back to the prisoner's pre-incarceration addresses for redistricting and other purposes can send the Census Bureau a data file indicating where each prisoner was incarcerated on census day, as well as their pre-incarceration address. The Census Bureau will then review the file and provide a data product states can use to construct alternative mapping tabulations. At the moment, the ACLU of Kansas does not know if this measure has been undertaken in Kansas, and we are asking this committee and the Kansas Legislative Research Department to provide clarification and action to ensure that this happens. I will let you finish that testimony on your own time, but we do ask that this committee does everything within their power to ensure that our maps do not reflect prison gerrymandering. Please explore the additional resources at the end of our written testimony. An extended overview of the constitutional issues regarding prison gerrymandering and solutions to avoid it altogether are provided in these articles and resources. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here today.
Thank you. The next up is Jamie Shu, followed by Ryan Reza. And Jamie Shu from Douglas County. Welcome.
Thank you to members of the committee and for coming to Douglas County. My name is Jamie Shu. I'm the county clerk, and I've served as the county clerk since 2005. So I went through the last redistricting. My testimony kind of reflects a little bit on the nuts and bolts. So the first part of what I talked about is your timing. I know you didn't draw the maps in 2012, but we received the maps a couple days before the filing, and that put quite a bit of stress on those of us that run elections. We have to get ballots out 45 days prior to any election, and we had about a week and a half in order to create ballots. And when, especially in Douglas County, we didn't just move precincts, we moved streets and houses. It took a long time for our staff to kind of decide where people are going to vote and where their ballot goes. And when my favorite is in the southern part of the county where they used a large utility line as the deciding factor on a house district, we had to go to aerial maps to figure out if your house on your farm stood to the north of the line or the south of the line and what ballot you get. And that took time, and that was pretty stressful because I lay awake at night worrying that people get the wrong ballot. So that kind of leads to whatever changes you make, if you can keep precincts whole, that is vital for all of us. I give you a map on the back of my testimony, which is Willow Springs Township. Willow Springs Township has about 1,100 voters. They did in 2012 have one House member and one Senate member. They were divided horizontally by House district and vertically by Senate district, so they now have 4 districts. They have Senate 19 H45, Senate 19 H54, Senate S3 H45, and Senate 3 H54, which means in a partisan primary, they have 8 different ballots for 1,100 people. If that was the case in 2022, when we also have a constitutional amendment and have to have ballots for unaffiliated voters, that means I have to have 12 ballots for 1,100 people and making sure that they all get the right ballot. What's also important is don't pull out houses. We have a number, Senator Francisco has expressed to me a number of concerns about, she has where one house was pulled out of a precinct. And so technically the voters in that precinct, the poll workers could know how those voters voted because only 2 people are in that Senate district in that precinct. It divides up. When you look at Willow Springs, or if you look at many neighborhoods where you divide out a house, you break up an entire neighborhood, not just community of interest. So try to get your work done as quickly as possible. And also just make sure that you move precincts and try not to separate houses and streets. Thank you.
Wow. Jamie, thanks a lot. That was really good. We appreciate that. Next up is Ryan Reza. I hope I got that right. And private citizen, and following will be Carol Williamson. Please, welcome.
I'm gonna be pretty honest. It's pretty hard to follow
Yeah.
Jamie Shu, but I'll give it my best. Hello, members of the committee. My name is Ryan Reza. I'm a senior here at the University of Kansas, originally from Topeka, and I've lived in Lawrence the last 4 years. Born and raised here in Kansas, I love this state, and I want to grow. I want this state to grow and develop, and I want us to move forward toward a brighter future. I want to stay here long term. I want to, build a family here, and I want to live the rest of my life here. This is why when we talk about these incredibly influential decisions like redistricting, we have to put ourselves in the shoes of the people who are impacted by it the most. If we want a Kansas that is not shrinking, a Kansas where young folks want to come here, and a Kansas where we can feel passionate about the communities we live in, we need fair and equal districts. Politics in the present day is a mess. We can all admit it. No matter what side you're on, there is a deep divide that prevents us from working towards the changes that this country needs. We need to find a way to clean up our political system so that we can have a government that truly feels representative again, that works for the people and doesn't work against it. The people who sit on this committee have the ability to help us work towards that form of government again. By passing fair and equal districts, we can help clean up our politics so that those sit in office are actually representative of the districts they belong to. The individuals who sit on this committee have the opportunity to change the way that politics works in this state, to create a state that is more representative for all Kansans, no matter what race, color, ethnicity, doesn't matter. More representation is needed here in the state. I implore you all to draw fair and equal maps. It'll better all of us, regardless of what political affiliation you belong to. Kansas has bright and diverse communities that deserve the opportunity to elect their neighbors, family members, and community leaders. As the COVID-19 pandemic runs rampant through our country, our society is moving towards a period where decisions like this will impact our future greater than ever before. Our nation is at a turning point in its history where political decisions like redistricting will make or break democracy. I thank the committee for your time and want to thank you all for coming for making the trip to Lawrence this afternoon. If any of you ever need input from students and younger folks in Kansas, Jayhawks are always the way to go.
All right. Ryan, thank you. Appreciate that. All right, next up will be Carol Williamson, private citizen, and on deck is Glenda Overstreet Vaughn.
Hi, I'm Carol Williamson. Good afternoon. I live here in Lawrence. First, since I'm talking about election issues in Kansas and encouraging the empowerment of all Kansans to vote, I must state that I am not an election official. A recently enacted Kansas voter suppression law could cause me to be charged with a felony if you perceive me to be an election official if I am not. I am not. I love state and local government because it has the ability to deliver the freedoms of our country in a way that best serves the lives of the people where they live. I'm a lifelong Kansan who moved to Douglas County in 2011 due to gerrymandering after redistricting from the 2000 census. Douglas County was split into 2 congressional districts in 2011 when I moved here. It was split by partisan Republican legislators in order to neutralize Lawrence's diverse voting power. I'm a savvy voter, and Douglas County Election Office is an outstanding voter information and engagement program, as you saw from Jamie Shu. But it was still confusing and frankly disenfranchising that our city, county, my friends and colleagues were not united in our legislative and state board of education districts. This division between legislative districts impeded local, city, and county government in coordinating with state and federal resources and made it harder for individual voters to be heard. After the 2010 census, the legislature failed to accomplish redistricting and the courts took it over. Lawrence and Douglas County were united in Legislative District 2 since 2013. There are other counties like Miami, Pawnee, and Marshall County who are split between 2 legislative districts. There's talk of dividing Johnson County or move it to District 1 to defeat Sharice Davids in her bid as a Democrat for re-election to Congress representing Kansas District 3. Such a move would represent gerrymandering to gain Republican advantage and does not serve the people of Kansas. Please redistrict to adjust to population growth and change in a way that groups Kansans geographically, especially to keep counties and cities together in one legislative district. Please do not redistrict to adjust to population growth and change to create political advantage for one party. We don't agree on everything on Kansas, and we won't. Our votes and ideas may be divided, but state and local government should not. It should work to unite us for common good, not disenfranchise us and divide us for political gain of one party. Fair maps and no gerrymandering in Kansas, please. Thank you for your service to Kansas.
Thank you. Next up is Glenda Overstreet Vaughn, private citizen, and on deck is Cal Wiebe. Is Glenda here? Okay. We'll move to next. Cal Wiebe, sir. Private citizen. Oh, no, I'm sorry. LFK, Douglas County, right?
Inside joke. I'm an LFK resident.
Okay. All right. All right. All right. And I'm sure I mispronounced your name, so if you please get me right.
He's fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome.
In Dutch, it would be Viva, but that's hundreds of years ago.
Okay.
I'm a retired attorney, and I've listened to all the stuff, and lots of it is really good. And I'm thinking, what can I ask for that are one or two good pieces that everybody ought to say, yeah, let's do it that way. Here's the first thought. And maybe there's a process or procedure and I don't know about it. But all of you committee members and chairs, assistant chairs, you represent a district and you get elected. But it's really special to you to get a good district. I worked for the post office 2 summers. It was a great job, except for the occasional dog and thunderstorm. The best route of all was I live on the route. Okay. You guys live on your routes. How do you ensure? What's your process? Does everybody know what the process is and agree to follow it? That you give non-incumbents a fair shot. Damn, that's hard to do. You need to come up with a way. It needs to be in writing. And somehow everybody needs to affirm it. I'd like to say swear an oath, but maybe that's going too far. But it seems to me on a broader basis, a mission statement as to the whole process would be good. Now, when you're sworn in to serve as a legislature, you take an oath of office or you give your solemn affirmation that you're going to uphold the Constitution. This districting work is much more specific than upholding the Constitution. The Constitution, for instance, the 14th Amendment, 5th section, is important, but you need a recipe, if you will. I cook and eat. You need a mission statement, a recipe that lets you measure what you are doing. And that recipe, that mission statement, needs to be given to the public before you start work. I'm not saying you can do it Monday morning, but maybe Wednesday afternoon of next week, you know? And the same for your own districts. Thank you very much.
Sir, thank you. And I've now been advised of the inside joke, so I got it. All right, so next up will be Stephanie Sanford, private citizen, and on deck is Blake Swinson. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. And thank you for allowing me the time to speak. My name is Stephanie Sanford, and I work for the Self Advocate Coalition of Kansas, but I'm here as a lifelong disability rights advocate. And I say lifelong because my mother was blind when I was born, and that was 50 years before the Americans with Disabilities Act. She died before she could cast a vote independently, and I really regret that. But what I want to talk about is the disenfranchising of a significant portion of our community, whether intentionally or unintentionally. And I would call your attention to the most recent voting bills that you passed last session that went into effect at the last primary. I have a staff member who has voted an advanced ballot for his entire life. He's either voted as an advanced ballot or in person. I received a call Saturday morning, this past Saturday morning. He was frantic. He had just read an email that his vote was provisional and that he had until Monday morning at 9 o'clock to contest it, or his ballot would not be counted. This is a man who prides himself on his civic duty of being a voter and holding his elected officials accountable. Well, I don't know about you, but if you don't have a car, you have a significant disability, you need transportation that's not readily available. What do you do on Saturday when the transportation offices are closed until Monday morning at 8 and require a week's notice for transportation? In effect, his vote, and I don't know how many more across Kansas, have been disenfranchised unintentionally. Now, I have a big mouth, and I do not take no for an answer. Yeah, it's gotten me in trouble before, but in this case, I believe it really made a difference, because Monday morning at 8 o'clock, he called to see if his ballot would be what we were going to do, because he could not get down there. And they told him his ballot would not count. It would be provisional, because they had moved where the line was to sign on the ballot. They moved where the line was, and that's why his ballot was not counted. He hung up, frustrated, called me, and of course, I didn't take no for an answer. And I used the two simple words that I hope will run some fear into some folks: reasonable accommodation. How are you going to reasonably accommodate for someone who cannot physically make it to the place on time? That's an unintended consequence of just one primary election. I would ask that you take this very seriously, because no matter what your districting decisions are, no matter what your voting rules and legislation is, the unintended consequence for 25% of Kansans with disabilities, is to be disenfranchised. And our voice should be heard, because unlike any other minority, you can all join us in a heartbeat or in a blink of an eye. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Thank you. Blake Swinson?
Correct.
Swinson, private citizen, and on deck will be, hope I get this right, Paul Bonmeyer. So please, welcome.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. As a sixth-generation Kansan myself, and I'm from Lawrence as well. As a sixth-generation Kansan myself and the father of seventh-generation Kansans, I appreciate the opportunity to provide you with some thoughts on redistricting. First, I would like to echo the previous comments about fairness and consistency in the redistricting process. Our current composition is one of the most fair in the country and lacks the horrors of gerrymandering we all know. I'm a teacher here at Free State High School. I teach government class, and one of the things we talk about is redistricting. And I would recommend that everyone play the game, redistrictinggame.org, and learn about how hard this process is. It effectively demonstrates the challenge of redistricting, whether political bias, racial bias, or even just equal population size. Second, I would like to bring attention to a long absent part of the constitutional process for redistricting. In addition to fitting districts due to population changes over a decade, the U.S. House of Representatives was also supposed to add new membership and did so for the first 120 years. Currently, we are using the census numbers from 1910 to arrive at 435 members for the House of Representatives. This was due to members of the Prohibition Caucus who did not add to the size of the House with the 1920 census, and then in 1929 passed the Permanent Apportionment Act, which stopped the ability to expand representation to the House to try to protect prohibition, which did not work. This is the reason that Kansas lost a congressional seat with the 92 redistricting process, even though the state of Kansas had increased in population. As a result of the Permanent Apportionment Act, Kansas actually lost representative and electoral college power. A repeal of the Permanent Apportionment Act would reduce the average number of citizens within a district from its future average of 760,000, with our 2020 population of 331.4 million, while in 1910 there would have been an average of 212,000 per district with a population of only 92.4 million. A smaller number of constituents per district would provide for more equal and better representation. In addition, an increase in the number of seats would also help alleviate many of the electoral college population imbalances that exist between some states. Now, clearly developing a new plan for how to address the constitutional responsibility will take time and debate, but I believe that this would be a step in the right direction for strengthening our democratic values and institutions. I urge the state legislature to be the first in the country to advocate for the U.S. Congress to overturn the Permanent Apportionment Act and return one of the key aspects of constitutional popular sovereignty back to the redistricting process. Thank you for your time and consideration.
On deck is Marlene Merrill, and up right now is Paul Bonmeyer from Lecompton. Sir.
Yes, I'm Paul Bonmeyer from Lecompton, and my ancestor came here in 1857. We've lived in Douglas County all our lives, and we would like to be a part of Douglas County with our elected officials. Lecompton at one time was the county seat for Douglas County. It was the territorial capital, and right now, after the 2010 election, our senatorial district has been split in two with two senators. And as Jamie Shue mentioned, there was complete confusion as to who was in what precincts following the 2010 election. So keep us in Douglas County.
Okay, on deck is Renee Slinkard, and up is Marlene
Merrill.
Merrill. Okay, private citizen. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you
Welcome.
for the opportunity to speak. We live in a democracy. We want democracy to endure. And unless we enable and encourage all people to vote, that's not going to happen. And so as you do the redistricting, I really urge you to keep in mind a lot of the comments that have been made to not divide minority populations, not divide cities, take a firm look at how the effect of your decisions are upon precincts and voting areas, and make it a fair process. I think one of the things that troubles me as we go into this is that your criteria for making decisions is hidden. We don't know how you're going to make these decisions, and that troubles me a great deal. And I hope as you look at the census data and as you move into the next step, that you make public what this is about. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. On deck is Marilyn Brune, and next up, though, is Renee Slinkard, private citizen. And if I pronounced it wrong, please correct me. Are you Renee? I'm sorry. Okay, all right, my fault. Then I guess next up is Marilyn Brune. Welcome.
First, second most of what's been said here today. I'd like to say this about, I remember the 2010 redistricting, and I remember seeing some of the maps that were presented for Wyandotte County and Russell County and out west. Those are the same district. Why not? And it was so bad. It was embarrassing. It was made Kansas once again the laughing stock of the country. And I'm really hoping that you'll keep in mind that we are paying attention and we do know something about what's going on. And like somebody already pointed out, Susan Weigel already said, oh, well, this is a perfect time to get rid of an inconvenient representative that was duly elected twice. So I'm asking you, please don't do that. I don't understand why you couldn't just put the raw data and the rules, the more or less the desired, well, the theoretically at least desired outcome of fairness and keeping places together that belong together and communities together that belong together that have similar interests. That could all be put into a computer and churned out with an algorithm, and you guys could go fishing or something. So I'll be glad to give the gentleman here that gave up his minutes to the lady who spoke so eloquently for most of us, the other half of my time, because that's really what I have to say.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I want to make 2 points. Is I failed to mention that Marilyn is from a Democrat precinct committee person. Yes, ma'am. And the other thing, sir, is we've actually been keeping track to make sure you get your time back. So yes, sir. Absolutely. We'll be shooting for that. Next up will be Dan Huffman, private citizen, followed by on deck is Teresa O'Neill.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you about this important decision. I consider myself a bit of a confused voter because I'm currently registered as a Republican. I've been an independent and I lean Democratic. And sometimes it drives me crazy. And probably was part of the craziness that made me put my name down. But I do believe for my children and grandchildren that this process matters greatly. And it's easy to lose sight of that. And the thing that I think makes me lose sight of that I want your help with in this redistricting and in your general citizenship representing us, is polarizing decisions. I've become much more polarized in my thinking than I thought possible. I used to pride myself, and I forget the gentleman or woman who said it, that the sign of a first-rate mind is the ability to hold two opposing views and still function. I thought that I was capable of doing that in most situations. But I found it harder and harder to do that. And I think the reason for that is I've lost trust. I've lost trust in some of those parties that I've mentioned. But a fellow named H.L. Mencken said, for every complex problem, and I appreciate the advice that's been given, I think this is a complex problem. There's a simple solution, and it's always wrong. So those who expect you guys to be able to take all of this input and come up with a snap decision that's right may be wrong. I think it's a complex issue. But I'd suggest one of the guiding principles in how you approach this is it polarizing this state and its citizenry or not? And if it is, you're just reinforcing my ignorance, but you're not making me a better citizen. So I'd ask for your help, and I mean that sincerely. I need your help because I've become polarized in my thinking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was great. Okay, next up is Teresa O'Neill. And on deck is Steve Stemmerman. Okay, all right, we'll move to the next then. Steve Stemmerman, private citizen. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Glad to be here. Can I ask a question? Is that okay? Anybody can answer. Can you hear me better now?
We can hear you.
Okay. Am I allowed to ask a question?
Well, sir, I mean, listening to it, we'd rather just talk to us and tell us what you want us to hear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you in charge of redistricting all the way down the ballot or just U.S. congressional districts?
And
So,
state.
yeah. Say again?
State.
Yeah, all right. I thought he said something. So state and federal.
Okay, so.
And, by the way, and school board, right? School board's part of that, right? But that's a state school board.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. What I would ask is that, well, the last redistricting, at least for the U.S. congressional districts, was done by the courts. The legislature couldn't come to a head on an agreement. And what they came up with is routinely accepted as fair. Now, so my next question is, do you need to make any changes? Are you required to make any changes, or is that just an option? Can you stick with the current?
So it's all driven by the population data and we go from
Okay,
there,
but,
right?
but is that an option to sticking with the current districts?
No.
So you have to make some changes.
Yeah.
Okay, so then my next thing I would like to ask, which you're probably not going to appreciate, but I'm not. I would really like to encourage an independent commission.
Okay.
Okay, because legislatures just can't do that without a political agenda. It can't be done. It needs to be done by an independent commission. And I would very much encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. Hey, sir, I appreciate you working with me there. Thank you.
Good job.
All right. Next up will be Melinda Levon. Hopefully I said that correctly. Private citizen. On deck is Roberta Sue McKenna. Welcome.
Thank you. Bear with me, I'm at the age where sometimes I need glasses and sometimes I don't, right?
Can you get closer?
Yeah.
So my name is Melinda Levon. Thank you so much for, can you hear me now? Oh, sorry. Okay, microphone. I've lived here in Lawrence for about 25 years now, and before that I grew up in rural Leavenworth County. I always explain to people I made it 13 miles down the road and I'm still here. And now at that time, that was the 3rd congressional district, right? And then we got put in the 2nd. And today I'm a home birth midwife and I actually serve all of the 2nd congressional district and the 3rd. I drive a lot. My tire guy, his name's Steven and he loves me. There are only 2 counties in the 2nd district. Actually, I haven't delivered a baby and I think it's Montgomery and Marshall. And so what that means though, is that I work for people in their homes. I see where they live. I see how they live. I see what resources they have and what they don't have. And I hope you start understanding a little bit about the 2nd congressional district and why 2nd might have lost some population and 3rd has gained, right? I mean, I was so excited to finally get the numbers late last night, right? But then I couldn't sleep. But the 3rd congressional district is gaining and the 2nd is losing people because there's almost nothing down there. Where are the hospitals? We didn't expand healthcare. We didn't protect the hospitals. There's nowhere to have a baby. I have to come all the way down there, right? And when we talk about family values and you want Kansas to grow and you want families to bloom here, but we're not providing them the resources to even do that. The federal government had to step in and start giving people cash every month. They can't afford food. They can't. And there are a lot of people, farming communities, okay? Like these women are at home with their children on the farm. He's trucking for enough money to pay for everything for the farm. And things like a 2-hour ambulance ride to the nearest hospital to have their baby is not an appropriate birth plan. I also serve on the state's the Maternal Mortality Review Committee. We are losing moms here because of the system that our politicians and our policies have created. They are dying. Do you understand that? They are dying. And I need you guys to do better, and I need you to stop thinking about votes and start thinking about the actual individual people and the families of Kansas. We need to do better by them. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Roberta, please go ahead. Private citizen.
I am a private citizen. I did not grow up in Kansas. I moved here as an adult from Louisiana. And it was like a breath of fresh air. I was a teacher in Louisiana. And when the federal money came in, the school board all got new cars. I didn't. As a small child, I lived in occupied Germany. My family was career military. And I remember children begging on the streets. As a young adult, I lived in the Philippines and watched their election system there. My professional life has been working on behalf of children. I think the best plan for the children of Kansas is that redistricting be managed by an independent commission. I thank you for your time and the work you're putting on.
Thank you. Greg, I guess you know you're up.
30 minutes, right?
Well, I was going to go the other direction, but figured you could figure that out.
Didn't
All
want to
right,
say
sir.
it.
Yes, sir.
Um,
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for your work. As a German descendant, I have strongly held views, and sometimes it's hard for me to see another person's position. In this area, I've heard what people speak today, and actually it has given me pause for thought about how hard I work for the democratic process. If we want to have fair and equal representation, then the people who decide how that should be done, just as a matter of course, should not be on the committee that does that. It should be an independent commission. I don't know how this happened. All I know is what I've heard today and what I've seen in the past. And I appreciate the fact that you noted my 3 minutes and that you all say that you want to listen to the people of Kansas. And I hope this makes some type of an impact. My hope is tempered by the fact that most Kansans want the expansion of Medicare, and yet here we are. Thank you very much.
Oh. Okay. Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments, and thank you to everybody for all your comments. So you know, we also had, and that does conclude all the ones that have signed up. We did have 34 written testimonies already turned in. And they could have said some of the same things, but they also say things that are more detailed. I'm sorry, did I miss somebody on the list? Oh, wait. Okay, ma'am. Well, actually, you are on the list. I called it, and I guess we just missed it. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
I apologize. I worked during the day. And so, I was trying to get here when I heard my name being called.
Okay. All right. Great.
But I want to thank you all for allowing us to be here to provide comment. I am a private resident of Kansas, and I've been so for all of my life. I am from Topeka. I was born in Wichita, but I also represent a number of community organizations. But I thought it was very important to come here, and I'm glad to hear that there are a lot who have indicated a request for an independent commission. I too stand as a proponent of an independent commission. In just looking at just some of the media that came out in the last couple of days about the census, with respect to the census being taken, and there were a number of, there was an increase in the minority population that was recognized. I think that it is so concerning to me that I see that there are a number of individuals in the minority community that has not been appropriately represented. And so I look at an example. Just recently, we had a number of restrictions on the voting rights. And so there are a number of you that sit at this table that were very instrumental in pushing forth those restricted voting rights. So that concerns me greatly about the ability for you to be impartial in looking at some of the things that we need to have done with respect to redistricting. So that being said, I kind of look at what Maya Angelou said, and she said, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And so I just wanted to be able to come here and be able to voice that and say that I hope that you have the professionalism within you to be able to delegate that responsibility to a more neutral, more independent body, so that we can, as Kansas citizens, all feel that we've been impartially represented. So thank you.
Mayor, I want to thank you for making it out here and rushing to get here. So thank you for stepping up too and let me know you were here. So, you know, I said earlier that there was 34. A lot of the comments were included here. There's actually a lot more that's there, and there's other things. And that's actually what we want to make sure we go through this process. What we asked you for today, you've given us in spades, and we appreciate that. We love what you've been doing there, giving us the comments that you're giving us. It's been really good input. It really has. And thank you very much for that. It's really important to us that we hear that. And it truly is our goal to achieve that, the exceptional transparency, the public access, and the other things we've said. We recognize, just look at it as an overall picture as we're moving through that process. We're trying to get there. So help us in that effort. This is the 14th stop of this 14th stop tour. That's not the whole tour. It's not the whole tour. It's just the beginning of the process. And we wanted, the reason is we wanted to get out there, we wanted to hear what you all had to say. And it's been really good. And that's where we're not focused on all the other stuff. We're focused on what's important to you. And that's been, and this tour is not the only time put. We will strongly, and I will get to your comment, we will strongly emphasize that we want your input. We're working through what we're going to officially do between now and when we go back to session. We've got to get it all planned. Want to make sure we announce it right and do the things we're going to do so that everybody has a chance. We just wanted to announce that we're going to do this so we could hear from you and then move to the next stop. Now, also remember, once we do go back to session, once we start going in the process of drawing maps and going things, there'll be hearings that are done. There'll be testimony given. There'll be opportunity for input, and we'll go through that whole process again. And that's exactly because we want an unbelievable amount of input into this process. We truly want to go down that path. Pardon me for 1 second. And as I said, we wanted to hear what you guys had to say. And if you think of something that wasn't addressed today, and say it's 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, it doesn't matter when it is, in the afternoon, please send it in to us Send it by one of three methods. You got it by either the email redistricting@klrd.ks.gov. You've got the website, which is ksledgeresearch.org. .org. Make sure I get that right. And then the last one is by mail, which is KLRD, 300 Southwest 10th Street, room 68W, Topeka, Kansas 66612. And we've already received some mail. Actually, we got a piece of mail right here. It was great. I want to thank you again to the University of Kansas for this facility. And by the way, love the microphones. It didn't have a problem. Thank you guys very much. Yay. Because we've had problems at every stop on the email, on the megaphones. Hey, listen, thank you again to you guys, the audience, the committee. And like I said, but here, if you'll just bear with me 1 second. So this whole process, didn't happen just because, right? And it's like, as you look at it, it's like, I like to reference like a duck on the water. The duck on top of the water looks very calm, but there's a lot of the feet under the water pedaling really hard to make the duck move. And that's what's happening here. You see right up here is above that, but these guys over here, our research department, they did an outstanding job setting all this up. Yeah. Our Kansas Legislative Information Services, our legislative administrative services, the various sign language interpreters that we've had all through this process. They've been great. I want to specifically thank the Kansas City Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Carlos Gomez and Alada Aguirre, for volunteering translators for us as we needed them in Spanish language. That was just great. Thank you. And the many colleagues up here that have worked also behind the scenes to make things happen. Is she okay? I just want to make sure she's all right. Okay, all right. And look, as we've gone through this process, we've learned a lot. We've come out the gate, and if you look at where we started versus today, where we finished, it's a lot different than how we started. And that's the same thing in this process. We started in a certain way, and we're going to end a lot better than we are today. And we're trying to make sure we understand, and from you is how we're getting better, and from actually everybody here. And I want to thank all my fellow members for doing such a great job. I want to extend my thanks to the Senate committee, because this is a joint committee meeting, specifically Chair Wilburn, who had to endure my stories in the car. But what I really enjoyed was I got to learn so much about Kansas from him. He's traveled this whole state so many times and pointing out many things. The Vice Chair Masterson and the Ranking Sykes, who have explained a lot of things to me as we go along this process. And on the House side, my Vice Chair, who's been having to keep the time, but also make sure I help pronounce the names right and do everything else, as well as our Ranking Member Burrows, who's done the same thing with me. And it's just been a pleasure through this process as we go along. I believe we've got a solid team that's willing to work together to make and help Kansas achieve what we're trying to achieve in this whole process. And I truly believe that. I think this is a great team that is going to be representing you well. So with that, I just want to tell you, I want to thank all the members and everybody that's watching online. We appreciate your time, and thank you. Our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.